Hey everybody, I'm Kathy Resnichek.
I'm Richard Pressler.
And here we are today looking at the first assignment in Module 4 in the Tapped Wire Networking course. So the first assignment in this module looks at device management best practices. I imagine that's really probably pretty important because you want to follow those best practices that have already been established. And then in K-12 shops where they probably don't have enough staff, that following those best practices is probably going to help them at least be a little bit more efficient and going to use what's already been tested out. Is that true?
Yeah, and specifically, we're getting into the security best practices.
Right.
So there are best practices to be followed at all levels of a computer network. I mean, as you can imagine.
Right.
And there's even conflicting best practices just to make our lives extra interesting. But when it comes to the management of a network device, there are some things that are just very simple to do that will protect you from a lot of future pain and suffering, hopefully. As an example, you can imagine that if you have a high school and that high school is teaching, computer skills to students, and those students are at different levels, they might begin using tools to start to probe into the network, the high school network, and they might find that your switch or your router is out there somewhere, and they might decide to try the default password against it, right? Well, if you had left that default password on there, then you're not really following best practices, and you've opened the door to accessing that particular switch or router. So that's really what we're diving into in this assignment. It's just, it's nothing complicated, it's nothing hard, but some basic things. Like, for example, why not take the management of all of your network equipment and just put that on a different IP segment than anything that a user's on, and that way only allowed personnel or allowed IP addresses can get onto that segment in order to access the equipment. Another thing is switch to encrypted protocols for managing your devices. So instead of managing them using an unencrypted telnet session or an HTTP session, most network devices can be managed through SSH or they can be managed through HTTPS. And those are both encrypted, so if someone was in the middle sniffing the traffic and they were looking for your credentials, they would not see you pass those credentials to the device because it would be encrypted. So that type of thing is what we're covering in this assignment.
Well, and best practices, I think, is something that's easily understood by most people in various situations. We have lots of best practices in education and teaching. So for those of us who started in the classroom and ended up in the IT world, we can make those connections about where everybody has said these are the things that help you get your job done well.
Yeah, and my goal in this is that before a piece of equipment is deemed production ready, that there's this checkpoint. So there's a little bit of a list that I'm going to give to the student that says, okay, before you put this piece of equipment on your network, can you do these basic things just to make sure that it's not easy to break into? Just make it a little bit more difficult for someone who's trying to attack. And it also keeps out the casual, the high schooler who just scans the network and happens to stumble into something. That's pretty casual. It's hard to feel that they're necessarily fully responsible in that case, because as network administrators, we have to take responsibility for the network, and we have to assume that not everybody on the network is going to be a trustworthy individual.
You leave your front door wide open. You never know.
Exactly, and then you put out a big welcome mat,
And you put your empty big screen TV boxes that you just bought on your curb, and you say, hey.
Welcome. And it's interesting too, because there's even a legal aspect of it. With network equipment, if you don't warn somebody logging in that you are basically logging their attempts, or that you're recording their session, you can actually set yourself up for some legal issues down the road if they do break into your network and you're trying to sue them and you didn't tell them you were recording their actions. It's a little bit of a sketchy precedent, but it's always good to warn people that, hey, this is a piece of equipment that is important, and you're not welcome here. You're not allowed in this piece of equipment. This isn't just a lab or something. So.
Great, that sounds like a really important lesson.
I hope so. I think it'll go well.
Great.
Thank you.